Welcome to the Kentucky Auto Accident Podcast. Louisville attorney Jim Desmond has been handling injury cases related to traffic accidents for over 20 years. Jim will provide valuable information to help you and your family. He wants you to understand the important issues you need to know when it comes to handling car accidents and motorcycle wrecks in Kentucky. There's a lot riding on this, so let's get started. Well, friends, welcome to episode 1 of the Kentucky Auto Accident Podcast. I'm here with Jim Desmond of the Desmond Law Office, and we're excited to launch this. Jim, congratulations, man. This has been a while coming, and again, congratulations on your first episode.
Well, thank you, Jim. You're actually the one that came up with the idea, so if it goes well, he's responsible. If it goes poorly, he's responsible, so...
Well, I appreciate that broad shoulders,
got
my
the
friend.
blame before we started.
Thank you, man. Hey, let's let the audience know a little bit. If you don't know Jim Desmond, Jim is based right here in Louisville, and he covers both Indiana and Kentucky. The primary focus is Kentucky. I think that's just where you see the majority of your cases coming out of. But again, you're one of the few attorneys who's actually licensed to handle cases across the river in Indiana, so that's a little bit unique for you. A lot of people may not be familiar with podcasts. Maybe this is the first time they've heard of them. And I want to let you know, you can subscribe to a podcast. That does not mean that you're signing up for anything. That does not mean that you're actually going to incur a fee. When it comes to podcast, what a subscription does is it simply sends you a notification that, hey, a new episode's available. There's absolutely no cost. Podcast is completely free. So tell your friends about it. We'll post this up to various properties, including Facebook, including your website, everywhere else we can figure out how to do that. But if you're listening to this now and this information is helpful to you, by all means, go ahead and subscribe to it, and that way you'll get a notification as soon as we launch the next episode. The plan here is a frequency of every other week. So this is the first episode, and then 2 weeks from now, the second episode will come out, and so forth. So we're excited. Jim, let me introduce you to the audience, if you will.
Let me cut you off for a second, Jim. On that one point you just made, though, that's a good point. Neither you do a lot of marketing for me, and I am basically a solo practitioner. We don't have the time to follow up with people in the sense of sending out emails or marketing stuff. The whole idea behind this podcast, and I teased you for saying, you encouraged me to do it, is let's give some information to the consumer in a very easy, digestible form and, see if it's beneficial to them. Now, if they want to get hold of us, fantastic. I have my cell phone all over the place. But I don't want anyone to think, oh, we're going to subscribe to this and now we're going to get harassed. That's not our style.
No, this is strictly going to provide information, and hopefully it's useful information. And if a friend of yours or a family member or you yourself happen to be involved in a collision, by all means, we just want to give some information out there, but also make it very easy for you to contact someone that you've become familiar with over time.
Right.
And
because that's half of it. If you have an auto accident, that's half of it is just having somebody you can actually ask a question, whether you're injured or whether it's just property damage or something else. You can at least ask a question. We can get you on the right track, whether you choose to make a personal injury claim or not. That's half the battle right after a wreck happens. So
exactly, and I think most people just don't know attorneys. So one of the objectives here is just to get people familiar with you, your brand, your office, and kind of what you can do to help them. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about you, Jim. Why did you get into law, and specifically, what was it about injury law that kind of compelled you down this career path?
Well, I got into law for the reason that you hear all the time, which is that, you want to help somebody. And I was originally going to be a psychologist, changed my mind, went to law school, which is probably a good thing. Probably a little too abrasive sometimes to be a psychologist. Injury law, I like it the most because of the fact, okay, obviously the elephant in the room is that it's the most lucrative area, but that's not the real issue. If you actually get to understand injury law, you start to understand it's like building a puzzle. The injury, you have to be able to recover from the right person. You got to know whether they had insurance. You got to know whether or not the other person was at fault. It's, what kind of coverage do you have on your own car beforehand, on your own motorcycle? All these things are pieces of the puzzle that we're trying to put together. So for me, as an attorney, it's one of the most challenging aspects. Now, I hate the fact that sometimes I will have a client come in who's severely injured, and I get excited about it because it's kind of a tough case, and it's kind of almost like a law school question. But that's why I like doing injury law. It's challenging, and yet you're helping someone.
Well, we've talked for probably the last 10, 12 years about this. Being involved with this, I've watched you take calls middle of the afternoon, middle of the evening we'll be at dinner and suddenly you're taking a call. I think people just want answers. People want to know somebody is taking care of their case. A lot of people have never dealt with an attorney before. And so this car wreck is one of the biggest things they've ever been involved with. And the fact is now, rather than going to a case manager, rather than go to a paralegal, you have the opportunity to talk directly to you.
Right. And that's what they should do. I mean, if you think about it, that's the part. None of us, we all assume we're invincible, and none of us assume we're going to be in any kind of car accident. We don't think our family's going to be in car accidents. And then all of a sudden, usually because of someone else's negligence or stupidity, we're thrown into a car accident. And this car that we've taken care of and, tried to, cherish and make worthwhile is now damaged, and we got medical bills, and we're hurting and losing wages. I mean, you need somebody to be able to talk to and get solid advice. And one of the most frustrating aspects for me is that you'll see people try to get advice from like an insurance adjuster, and that's the wrong person. His interests are not your interests, or a friend who tries to claim he knows better. It's just, I don't like that aspect of things. I also I'm going to insult other attorneys here, and I probably shouldn't, but I'll be honest. It's the most lucrative area out there. So you'll get attorneys that will try to dabble in it. And it's not an area to be dabbled in. It's like workers' comp. I have 2 friends that I refer the workers' comp cases to. I don't want to touch it. I do not want to touch it in the least bit. It's an auto accident is something you want to find somebody who does just that, because we're dealing with it basically on a daily basis. So.
Well, and you like the freedom of being able to work directly with your client, but that wasn't always the case. I mean, you used to work for a larger personal injury firm here in Louisville.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
Well, just a little bit.
Thanks for nothing.
Well, no, but there is a difference, and unfortunately, a lot of times the market doesn't really understand that. But you were also in-house counsel for a company. Do you kind of walk us through that path and kind of what that was?
And I tease you, but when I worked with the big personal injury firm as a TV advertiser, they're still around. It was a very good experience. Okay, the part that bothers me about the bigger firms is that there's a lot of arrogance. You're handling a huge number of cases, more than the average attorney should handle. You're having multiple paralegals pretty much handle 90% of those cases because you can't handle all those cases. And the arrogance is, okay, well, if this client is difficult or whatever else, you'll go on to the next one because you've got this $1 million advertising budget, backing you up. I don't like that. I like dealing with clients directly. I like earning their loyalty. I've got a lot of clients that refer me family and friends down the road. Actually, the case I signed up right before this today, that's why I was late today, was, again, from a family member who said he did a good job for me. And so, again, I'm going to try to bust my tail end all the more for this guy because, again, his sister-in-law had enough courtesy basically to give my number. The in-house counsel part, I was actually in-house counsel for a local transportation company. That's an interesting experience altogether because rather than insurance companies, you're dealing with companies that are self-insured and they don't want to pay claims.
So you were actually the attorney for the company. That's in-house, right?
Yes. And the people I reported to, a lot of times it was trying to convince them that a claim was worthwhile. Let's get this thing settled. Rather than they wanted to approach everyone as, oh, this person's just after a quick dollar. This person's not injured, which, that's not the case. There's a lot of people out there that basically, well, I always say if somebody wants to put me out of business, it's not that hard, okay? Most people come to me and say, I did not want to come to an attorney, but because of the way I was treated by an insurance company or an adjuster, that's why I'm here.
Jim, there are a lot of different ways to practice law. There's big firms, medium-sized firms, small firms, solo practitioners like yourself. What do you love about being a solo practitioner? Because not everybody does it that way.
I like the fact that nobody tells me what to do. I mean, and that sounds horrible, but you got to realize my kids are understanding about this. I'll pick up the phone on a weekend and, or I'll go meet a client on a weekend. I've been in the middle of one of my famous cases I always remember is I was in the middle of Disney World when my kids were younger and I told them something told me to pick up the phone and, I told him go watch this fountain that was going up in the air. And the short story was I picked it up, talked to the client. It was somebody who had not signed me up yet. And they waited 3 days till I got back. And it ended up being a great case for me. And I ended up being able to help them out a lot. I like that freedom because, again, let's say you've been in a car wreck. All right. Well, first of all, if you've been in a car wreck, your car may not be operational. You may not be able to get out of bed. You may not be able to, go to a lawyer's office. I don't want to send somebody else out there to sign you up and try to get your story through basically what's written down on paper. I want to meet you. Okay. I want to know what's it all about. And I find in the long run, it helps me because they're ultimately a client. Let's face it. We all know insurance companies are out, excuse my French, to screw us. Okay. So when I have to approach a client later on and say, this case didn't go exactly like we wanted to, or we didn't get the offer we wanted, ultimately I've got more trust with that client and they've got more trust with me because we've been talking the whole time and I've been saying this might be an issue. And maybe it does come to bite us in the tail end or not, but they trust when I'm giving them good legal advice, hopefully that way.
Well, I tell you what, let's transition into a different area now, where I really want to kind of just allow you to give everybody kind of an overview of some of the insurance issues that come to play. And a lot of times, if I pull out my insurance card right now, I've got a series of numbers on there and kind of what those mean and why those are so important. I need to let the audience know. My name is Jim Ray. I'm not an attorney, so I need to formally state I'm a non-attorney spokesperson here. Jim Desmond is the attorney. So whatever I say, don't pay attention to me. Jim's the guy. Jim's the guy you need to listen to.
No, you're fine on all that, Jim, because it's really, this is the thing. It's common sense, and this is something I want to try to stress to people. What you're hitting at is that, okay, the state minimum for insurance coverage is $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident, $10,000 for property damage. And that's a lot of numbers, especially you're like, what does that all mean? It means that there is no guarantee under the law that the other person has enough insurance coverage or is lawfully insured like they're supposed to be, to basically cover the damages from a car wreck.
So that's somebody driving without insurance altogether.
Well, you can have either one, and I kind of crossed over on that. The first one is what we call underinsured. Somebody takes off. I use an extreme example. Somebody takes off your left arm in a car wreck. Okay, if that person, if the at-fault driver is a UPS driver, then it's $1 million case. There's more than enough insurance coverage and assets. If that at-fault driver is driving a 1980 Pinto, we're in trouble. Okay. There basically is no guarantee in the law that the other person has enough insurance coverage to cover your medical bills or your claim for pain and suffering. So I always think it's funny because everybody wants to say, as a personal injury attorney, they're saying, oh, you're just trying to be out for the money. You're just trying to do that. Half of what I'm trying to preach today, especially and even down the road, is getting you prepared. Basically, God forbid you need it, because you need the right kind of insurance coverage and you need everything set up before the accident ever happens. But if you're like 95% of the people out there, you don't know what that is you need on your car and your policy.
Well, I think that's one of the things early on when you and I started working together. I asked you to, take a look at my policy, and you pointed out some holes, some gaps. I mean, a lot of us buy insurance on price. This is something I hope I never have to use, but I have to pay it every month. And I just don't want to be paying more than I need to. So a lot of people try to, go for that lowest, and that opens them up to a lot of exposure they may not be aware of.
Well, and that's the thing. And I have nothing against insurance agents. I have friends who are insurance agents. But a lot of times that's what an insurance agent wants to do, is get you out as cheap as they can, because they want you to go down the road and say, I'm only paying, $1,200 a year for my car insurance, which would be fantastic. But the problem is, and don't get me wrong, in 80% of the accidents, you're probably going to be fine with that low coverage. The problem is for those other 20%, you might be in a situation where, okay, I plan for retirement, I plan for disability, I plan for, life insurance and all these other things. But now you're sitting here facing a bunch of medical bills and or lost wages because somebody else screwed up, caused an accident, and they don't have enough insurance to cover your claim.
Well, Jim, that brings up something that you've done videos on. We've done videos at a radio station, and we've put those out on your Facebook page and things like that. A lot of people think Kentucky is what they call a no-fault state, and they think, well, maybe I can't sue, or they get confused by that. When you're talking about people that may or may not be insured, and then it's up to me, even though I have insurance, now I've got to pay my. What is this no-fault concept?
No fault does not mean you cannot sue that other person. I always use the same example with my clients. I say, look, no fault means the fact that I go get in the car with my client and we go down the road. We are at a red light, stopped, and we're hitting the rear end by a drunk driver. Okay. There's no way I could cause that wreck in any fashion. My insurance company is the no fault carrier. The vehicle, the insurance company for the vehicle you're in, that's the no fault carrier. That means they have to cover your medical bills immediately, medical bills and lost wages, as a matter of fact. Up to $10,000. All right.
And that's guaranteed because I have insurance in the state of Kentucky.
Right. And the reason is, think about the concept. Everybody complains about it. But what it's trying to do is say, look, no matter how a wreck happens, you have an ability to get the medical treatment you need. That's the whole concept behind no fault. And they call it sometimes personal injury protection or basic reparation benefits. It's the same concept no matter what. And actually, Jim, when we were getting ready for this, you always said give them a little tidbits here and there. before we even get to anything else, if you have no fault insurance, well, if you have an accident and you weren't at fault and your medical bills appear to be substantial, let's say it was a pretty good injury and you had multiple CT scans, go reserve your no fault insurance right off the bat. Just reserve it right off the bat. Let your medical bills be paid by your health insurance. And I will get to it in a later episode, but that is, in short, a way to kind of try to maximize what we can do down the road. We can let your health insurance reduce those medical charges and use that no-fault coverage basically to deal with the health insurance lien. And I'll get into that detail down the road, but it's a little trick right off the bat if you need it.
And that brings up, realistically, when I'm in an accident, especially if it's not my fault, I mean, I'm probably dealing with three different things, right? I've got the damage to my vehicle.
Correct.
Okay, which could be substantial, especially depending on what kind of car I'm driving or what actually happened.
You want to know something on that right off the bat?
Yeah.
That's another reason why people come to me, because they lose out on the car damage. Because the car damage, okay, one, if the car repairs are 70% of the fair market value of the vehicle, what a car is supposedly worth, okay, they have to total it out. But again, the insurance company, whether it's your insurance company or the other person's insurance company, they owe you fair market value, not replacement value. So they owe you what that car is worth. So you just finished paying your car off and you had potentially another 6-7 years coming out of it. But all of a sudden they're telling you, no, we're going to give you $5,000 and you've got to go get a new car. That's one of the parts that's unfair about the law. So,
and so again, having someone like you on our side that is intimately aware with the law and the tactics and all that other stuff is kind of an advantage.
Yeah, well, because as you can tell, I feel bad. I just cut you off from your other thing, but I like this stuff. So it's like, okay, well, if you'll let me give you the information, I will. So.
Exactly. But coming back to that, I mean, realistically, if I'm in a collision, I've got to worry about getting my property repaired, my car, to the mechanic and out. I may have medical bills.
Correct.
And hopefully it's maybe just some, maybe I need to go see a chiropractor or a physical therapist. Well, maybe I end up having surgeries and an extended stay. And I mean, there's a lot of expense riding on this.
And on that issue, again, I'll give you a little golden nugget, if you want to call it, is if you've been in a car wreck and you don't think you've been injured, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but still go get checked out by a medical doctor within the first 3 to 4 days after an accident. I don't care if it's a MD, a chiropractor, a immediate care center. What you're doing is making it clear that, okay, you may be having problems and that you're not going to the doctor. That's fine. You don't always have to, but at least you're giving us the medical records. So 2-3 weeks from now, when we try to make a claim, well, I'm kind of going off track a little bit, but 2 or 3 weeks from now, when you go back to the doctor, it's clear that you were hurting from the day of the accident and not that, something developed 2 weeks after the accident.
Right. Because if I'm the insurance adjuster, I may say, well, no, you may have fallen down at home because after the accident, you didn't go see a doctor. So evidently you were fine.
Right. Because then think about it. And back to an insurance adjuster, again, I have nothing against them. I have some of their friends. But what's their job? Their job is to save that insurance company money. Well, how do they do that? They do that by saying your claim is not worth as much. And how do they do that? They basically say, okay, something else caused your injuries.
And if you don't have a medical record to show, no, I was in a collision on this day, then really it's a he said, she said kind of thing.
Another good attorney friend of mine always says it's not what we think happened in the case, it's what we can prove.
Absolutely. So coming back to that list of 3 then, property damage, medical bills, and also pain and suffering. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people kind of laugh at. Well, pain and suffering, what are you talking about? But that's real.
It is real. I mean, we do. That's where we recover money. But the bottom line is from that, whether you think you want to do something with it or not, you have to get that prepared kind of from day one. In the sense that, okay, legally, you have a 2-year statute of limitations on that. Okay, you have to file suit within 2 years or the claim's barred like it never existed. That's what a statute of limitations means, okay?
So from the date of the accident.
Yes. But practically, you've got to basically have your treatment supporting that your complaints of pain. So in other words, fine, legally, you could wait 6 months and try to still make a claim. But if you haven't been treating for the first 6 months after an accident, no jury is going to believe that basically this was related to the injury sustained in the accident. So as much as people may not want to make a personal injury claim, they've got to kind of do the same process and get ready for it from day one. Now, if they don't want to do it down the road, that's up to them. But they still have to take those same leaps and get the treatment they need and get basically back in order as much as possible.
And realistically, people could do this on their own. They could keep track of all this stuff. They could know which insurance company to contact, what to say, when when to give a statement, when not to give a statement. I mean, I could represent myself, right? I mean, I realistically could. May not be a good idea. I don't do my own dental work. I don't cut my own hair, but I could do this, or I could hire an attorney.
Well, of course, the audience can't see that. I was kind of cringing when you were saying that, because I understand. I used to take that attitude. I don't really anymore. It is like selling a house, okay? You don't necessarily need a realtor to sell a house, okay? Then in the same respect, the realtor is going to sell it quicker, better, and faster. I have kind of changed my attitude, and I don't think people should represent themselves anymore, because what I've seen is too many screw-ups. Not big things, not things that people mean to do, but little mistakes that have cost them money.
Not claiming something, not presenting something, not getting the right documentation.
Your health insurance has a right to get their money back. It's called a health insurance subrogation claim or health insurance lien. Many times that can be negotiated down. They don't know that. So
Right.
they cost themselves some money in their pocket. Or I remember someone came in and they were very happy that they recovered what you call the liability carrier's limits, meaning the maximum amount of insurance on the at-fault driver. Well, that was great, but they didn't make an underinsured claim, because when they recovered that much, they had the potential to go against their own policy and make what we call an underinsured claim. And you've got to jump through the hoops. There's a lot of statutory requirements. Well, they didn't do that. So again, they potentially walked away from another source of recovery.
Well, I know one of the things that we're going to talk about in an upcoming episode is the fact that it's not really the ultimate settlement or verdict that you get. It's what you actually keep in your pocket.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what a lot of people forget. And this is, the fact is these adjusters negotiate 24/7. This is what they do day in, day out. It's what an attorney does often, is they negotiate. Now, when I walk in, or my neighbor or my friend or a family member walks in, they may not be ready for this. And there can be a big problem.
It's funny. You went to the insurance adjusters, and as you said that, I'm sitting here saying, do I get a chance to bash TV attorneys? The reason I say that is that, all right, how do I put this? Two things. First of all, a good personal injury attorney, it's not how much do I recover with my right hand for you. It's how much do I recover with my right hand, and how much do I keep people out of your settlement with my left hand. Because if I recover $100,000 for somebody, and $95,000 of it is eaten up between attorney fees, costs, and health insurance liens, what good does it do? It doesn't. And I always, the TV advertisers, I always hate the fact that they're always about, well, we'll get you a check or one call and that's all this other stuff. It oversimplifies things, because again, what I'm trying to do as an attorney is to maximize what I can put in your pocket. Because look, I charge a 1/3 fee, okay? 1/3 of whatever I recover with a case that doesn't involve a lawsuit. That's what I charge. That's substantial. I'm not stupid. I know that's high. But in the same respect, well, first of all, it's actually lower than a lot of firms these days, I found out, but that's another story. But in the same respect, you want to earn it. And how do I earn it? I earn it by basically maximizing what that client puts in their pocket. I want them to recover more money than I do, because otherwise they walk down the road and somebody says, how'd you do in that car wreck? And they say, well, Desmond did great, but I got screwed.
Right. So realistically, maybe we get a large settlement and we got a big check coming in, but now, okay, the insurance covers some of it, but now all these other bills, a doctor's office, a physician's group, an anesthesiologist, somebody like that, start sending me bills outside of that. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot about all this other stuff. I've signed that medical release. I've signed that legal release in the case. I can't go back to the negligent driver. This is what I've got. You understand how to go to the hospital up front and begin negotiating that aspect of it as well.
Well, you brought in two concepts. First of all, I'll throw a little golden nugget back in again. When you sign a release, okay, when you sign a personal injury release, I always use the same example to clients. I say, look, at the end of a case, I'll bring a client in. I will have a check from an insurance company. I've already talked to the client. They know approximately what they're going to get, but I still go through this and I say, look, you go back to the doctor tomorrow. He says you're going to go blind in your right eye. It doesn't matter how severe it is or when it's discovered. You cannot recover anything further. Excuse me. Allergies. But the reason I make that point is because when you sign a release, it's over and done with. Okay, you're letting the other person off the hook. Okay, completely, which is fine if the case is done and your treatment is done and you know what extent it is. But so no, on your first aspect of what you said, Jim, you can't recover anything more. The second aspect is who's got to get paid out of those funds, because that insurance company has looked and they haven't said, okay, we're paying you $50,000 for pain and suffering. They say we're paying you $50,000 because you have $28,000 in medical bills and we valued your personal injury claim at this other amount. Well, your health insurance, for example, has what you call a subrogation lien. Subrogation lien is basically, it says we have a right to get our money back. Okay. Health insurance normally doesn't, but if you go look at those long booklets they send you, look for in the front index, it'll say coordination of benefits or health insurance subrogation or first party coordination. It'll say, it basically says if you recover from someone else, okay, then we have a right to recover from you. And what we're saying about what you recover is your medical bills. So again, you've got to know how to negotiate those down. Or if you're in Indiana, it's a med pay. Kentucky, for example, is a no-fault state, right? Indiana is a med pay state. Very similar concepts, which is that your own insurance company covers your medical bills up to whatever you either purchase or whether it's automatic. Well, in Kentucky, you settle exclusive of the no-fault lien, meaning you don't have a duty to pay them back. In Indiana, all settlements are inclusive of the MedPay lien. So you have a duty to pay back that MedPay lien out of the settlement.
So that money's not going into my pocket, it's going back into someone else's pocket, even
Correct.
though I've already agreed that this is the amount of the case, this is the value, this is what we're going to settle for. Again, it's not all my money.
Right. And that's the problem because, okay, if you don't do it right, this is why I say I cringe again about people representing themselves. You generally have a 2-year statute of limitations on most of these things we're talking about. So you settle your case 6 months after the accident, and 18 months after the accident, you got some insurance company or health insurance knocking on your door and saying, hey, where's our money?
Exactly. That may be something you didn't account for. Maybe you spent it. Maybe you're doing something else with it because, again, you went in kind of with some knowledge, but not all of it, and you really weren't aware of what all the variables.
Who the heck would think that health insurance has a right to get their money back? Because we pay all these premiums and everything, so why should they get their money back? But that's what the law says. It's under, if anybody wants to look it up, go look up ERISA liens, ERISA. And it's all came about since about 1975 forward, but it's a crazy concept. And that's one of the other concepts I'll tell you in the law is get rid of the idea that the law makes sense. It doesn't make sense. It tries to, it endeavors to make sense. It endeavors to be fair. It does not succeed.
Well, to close out the idea about fees, one of the things that I think a lot of people are worried about, and you said it earlier, wow, the attorney's going to take 33% of the money. Okay, what am I actually going to be left with if I've got to go out and replace my car and do all these other things and pay some of these hospital bills and all these other things that are coming in? You have I won't say a unique policy, but you have a stated policy at your firm that basically says you're not going to make more than your client makes. Right. And I think that's a real fear for people. Can you explain that?
Well, and let me, you just brought up a car damage, by the way. Any firm that charges you a fee off car damage, I mean, come on, give me a break, okay? Just do it as part of the personal injury settlement. Because again, if your $5,000 car is damaged, okay, and I charge you a 1/3 fee, you're immediately in the hole just for my services. That's just not fair. But the part you're talking about is for pain and suffering. And what I do is, okay, I charge 1/3 of what I recover if it's without a lawsuit, 40% if it's a lawsuit. Written policies like most people in town, which is you don't owe me anything unless I recover something. The part I do differently is for a case that doesn't involve a lawsuit because it's too hard. The costs get too high with lawsuits, but I explain that to my clients when the time comes, is for a case that doesn't involve a lawsuit that I won't take more as an attorney's fee than a client will as a net settlement. So a client's going to put $5,000 in their pocket, but my fee is supposed to be $8,000. I've got to lower my fee, so they put more money in their pocket than I do. And I just do that because I think it's bad business otherwise. Again, as I kind of said earlier, but it's an example I use always with my clients. I'm like, I don't want them going down the road and saying, oh, Desmond came out of this thing great, but I didn't. I want them to come out and say, I came out the best I could with his efforts and because of his efforts.
In all reality, you said something kind of interesting there. Not every case is going to be a big jury trial. Regardless of what you see on television, most of these things are going to settle anyway. Is that right?
Correct. Most of them do, but I mean, that's the thing people need to get rid of. Here, you want another golden nugget? Get rid of the concept that Johnny wasn't hurt and got $25,000. It doesn't happen. Get rid of the concept of 3 times your medicals. That was a formula that existed in the 80s, okay? The average soft tissue case is a $3,000 to $10,000 case, not including your medical bills, okay? And you want to be an average soft tissue case. That means you're not dealing with broken bones, surgeries, injections, epidurals. But so it's about $3,000 to $10,000 case. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do what you can to maximize it. It doesn't mean that there aren't cases that are better. I mean, I had a drunk driver case that went beautifully the other day. Actually, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago. And the short story was it was a soft tissue case normally, but the other guy was drunk and he was convicted of being drunk. So I got to make a claim for what you call punitive damages in addition to all these compensatory damages that you and I have been talking about. And again, we hit the ball out of the park on it because again, it was something a little bit different. And that's why I always tell people, don't listen to your friends who say, well, I got this amount or I got that, because it depends. If you have the same amount of medical bills and the same amount of treatment, if your car looks like, a pancake, I can do better on that car than the car that has a scratch bumper.
Exactly. And again, every case is unique. The fact pattern is distinct and unique to that situation.
Exactly. And it also depends on the insurance companies because some are more reasonable than others. So,
well, Jim, let's transition into the final segment. And this is something we're going to do each week. And the segment is called So This Happened This Week. And talk to us about a situation that you ran into, something that went on that I think would be valuable for the people listening here.
Well, actually, I was late today. I signed up a friend. I shouldn't say a friend. I signed up a person who my friend referred them to me. And the short story is, well, one, they're passengers, so I know they're not at fault for the wreck. And two, they don't have a police report or anything yet. So we've got to get that information from the driver. Okay. The part that kind of struck me a little bit that I kind of cringed at a little earlier was another friend of his tried to get him to talk to another attorney, and they did. And he said, well, I can recover this amount for him right off the bat. And I'm like, I hate that. That's malarkey. Okay. Because you don't know the value of your case until we see length of treatment, type of treatment, total medical bills, lost wages, how bad the property damage is. All these things go into a case. I told you earlier, the average soft tissue case is 3 to 10,000, but that's a huge range. And it depends upon, which insurance company we're dealing with, how much damage there is to the vehicle. Have you had a prior claim? Were you treated by a chiropractor or were you treated by an MD? All these things work into it.
So they kind of set a bad expectation when they throw a number right from their hip, going, oh, yeah, this case is worth, there may be a ballpark, but I mean, that's kind of short-sighted.
Well, and I hate to, I'm not trying to badmouth realtors, but what kind of realtor do you want to hire to sell your house? Do you want the one that comes to you that realistically says your house is worth this and you get it sold within the first 30 days? Or do you want the one that comes to you and says, oh, no, we can get, this price that you want for it, okay? And 6 months later says, oops, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I misjudged the market. They're trying to entice you to sign up with them, okay? And that is just, attorneys are not fortune tellers. We can't tell. I will shoot for the moon. I will do the best I can, but I will keep my clients' expectations low, and I want them to be realistic. I don't want them to plan on getting money from it. I don't want them to budget for it. I don't want them to buy a new car thinking they're going to get X dollars. That is just bad business to do. The bottom line is I always tell people, treat this thing like it's gravy, that if it comes in down the road, fantastic. Hopefully we'll hit the ball out of the park and make you very happy. But you don't want to rely on whether or not you need to take a case to a lawsuit or whether a personal injury adjuster actually thinks your case is worth this or related to the medical bills are related. You don't want to rely on any of that when you're forming your household budgets and such.
So the reality is put the case in good hands, give it to somebody who knows what they're doing and let them do their job for you.
Correct.
The right way.
You got to, Jim, it's funny. I'll say something and you don't even know this aspect. One of the things I really love doing, sometimes I have 2 or 3 very good friends that are personal injury attorneys, and you won't send the name, but you'll send a little fact scenario. Like you get an offer on the table and not most of them, but sometimes you're just like, you wonder about it. And you'll send over the fact scenario and you'll say, what do you think? And you'll get an idea about what is the range. Are you in the right range or not? Because as a personal injury attorney, sometimes what we have to worry about is believing our own hype. Because we go to an insurance company and we say, yeah, our guy's injured and he deserves this. And kind of, we try to talk you up and we try to talk the claim up. Well, we don't want to do that and be unrealistic about it and be the point where we have forced you into a lawsuit and dealing with defense counsel and depositions. And yet you have very little chance of improving the original offer. So
the reality is let you do your job and go get medical treatment as quickly as you can to start the case documentation. And be confident in the fact that if you're at the Desmond Law Office with Jim Desmond, obviously you're dealing with a guy that's done this for many, many years, who knows what he's doing.
Too many years. 25, I think I'm at.
just about.
But yes, and I know I got to cut this off a little bit, but the other thing is just pick up the phone and give me a call because it takes 2 to 3 minutes just to make sure you're on the right track. And you don't have to make a claim, but at least if we get you on the right track, then you can decide what you want to do with it down the road. That's why I use the cell phone for everything. It's simple. It's not big, complicated thing. It's just simple. Just give me a call and I can give you a lot of the same information fast. And if we want to do something about it, fantastic. If you don't, Okay, we formed a relationship and we know we can, touch base down the road.
Jim, let's give them a couple of quick ways they can get a hold of you. What's your office phone number, your cell phone number?
502-609-7657.
And you got a website. What's the website address?
AttorneyDesmond.com.
And from there, they can link over to the Facebook page. They can connect there as well with you. You've got a lot of engagement on your Facebook page as well, so people are always firing out questions and different things. It's a good way for them to check you out, learn a little bit more about you, and take it from there and make a good, well-informed decision. Jim, again, congratulations on episode 1 of your podcast. I'm proud of you. This has been a lot of fun. Good luck, and we'll get ready to record episode 2 here, and that'll be coming out a few weeks after this one, 2 weeks after this one. So all the best to you, buddy. Again, just congratulations. I'm really excited to see you.
Sounds good. Thanks again for all the help.
You got it, man. That's it for this episode of the Kentucky Auto Accident Podcast. Jim Desmond will be back in 2 weeks to provide information you need to know related to car accidents and motorcycle wrecks in Kentucky. Until then, check out AttorneyDesmond.com. You can also follow him on Facebook at Attorney James Desmond. Drive safely and please remember to buckle up.